Welcome to Arkansas Wildlife. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you this week. We're going to be headed up to the White River to do some trout fishing below Bull Shoals Dam. And a little later in the show, we're going to show you how the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission creates deep sea fishing opportunities right here in landlocked Arkansas. But first, we're headed out with some Arkansas Game and Fish Commission wildlife officers to look at the role they play in wildlife conservation. All that and this week's winner of an Arkansas hunting and fishing license right after this break. Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by Academy Sports and Outdoors. For all, for less.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Oh, not bad. Any luck?
Nope.
The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission uses many tools to manage the state's fish and wildlife resources. And while research projects and habitat management play a major role in ensuring healthy and stable wildlife populations, these men and women in green play an equally important role.
It's not about citation writing, it's about protecting our resource that we've been entrusted with. It's important that we protect our wildlife for our future generations. It's important to me that it's there for my kids and my grandkids and the public's grandkids to be able to enjoy in the future. And if we do our job effectively, then it'll be there for them.
Each spring, Game and Fish wildlife officers spend countless hours patrolling the woods to protect the state's wild turkeys.
During turkey season, we come into a lot of violations. Some of the more common ones is turkey hunting before season. We focus on some baiting situations where people scatter bait on the ground and try to kill a turkey over bait.
This is a bait site. They have baited this spot for turkey.
Every Game and Fish wildlife officer undergoes a rigorous 16-week training program before ever going into the field. But Arkansas game wardens also get ample opportunities for extra training. Earlier this spring, officers took part in this class, complete with field exercises, to help them learn how to recognize the smallest sign of illegal turkey hunting activities.
You can read it in a textbook, you can look at it on a screen, but until you put your boots on the ground, you don't really know what you're looking at.
The vast majority of Arkansans don't go afield looking to break the state's game and fish laws. Much of an Arkansas Game and Fish wildlife officer's job is about simply making contact with hunters in the field and keeping their eyes and ears open to possible violations.
We're in A3 district, which right now we're in Saline County, particularly Winona Wildlife Management Area. It covers a great majority of the northwest part of the county, plus it's public land, so it gets a lot of traffic, and a lot of hunters come from all over central Arkansas to hunt this area. Have you gone on and got that wildlife management permit yet? It's free. It's just kind of a way for them to survey the usage of different WMAs. How's it going?
Windy.
Yeah, bad. Tyler Webb.
Austin Crutchfield.
Nice to meet y'all. This is 135 and then 79's east of here.
Whether helping hunters in the field or making sure they're following the state's game laws, it's all in a day's work for the men and women of the Game and Fish Enforcement Division. Striped bass offer some of the natural state's most exciting fishing, allowing anglers to experience the thrill of saltwater fishing without leaving home.
There you go. That's number one. Let's try to get more.
The striped bass are an ocean fish. And in the late 50s, they learned out in South Carolina the Santee Cooper system. When they were constructing dams out there, they realized that they had landlocked some of these striped bass. And not only did they live in the freshwater, but they also prospered. They do grow to trophy potential, so we can have fish that get upwards of 50 pounds to provide a real unusual fishing opportunity.
Stripers came to Arkansas lakes in 1956 when the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission began stocking them in large upland reservoirs built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The fish thrived, but fisheries managers soon realized striped bass couldn't spawn naturally. That marked the birth of the Game and Fish Commission's Striped Bass Spawning Project. And 6 decades later, it's still going strong.
She's ready to spawn, boys.
The Game and Fish Commission's Andrew Hulsey State Fish Hatchery conducts the Striped Bass Spawning Project each spring, producing about 450,000 fish a year that are released in Arkansas lakes. From the collection of adult fish on Lake Ouachita to the stocking of fingerling stripers, fisheries managers dedicate a lot of time and attention to producing the natural state's version of deep-sea denizens.
Each year in mid-April, when the water temperature is appropriate, we come up to the Denby area. We know the habits of the fish, and at that time of the year, we're going to have those fish move into that area. So we'll come in with gill nets, commercial tackle. We'll set those gill nets just before dark and then run them for several hours afterward. And those stripers, we just rely on their natural movements, which they do keep moving in loose schools. And if we have a good night, we might be able to put 15, 20 fish on the fish truck. So we'll put a sufficient number of those striped bass onto the truck, transport them back to Hulsey Hatchery. To make this project happen, we have to rely on outside sources. We can't merely pull this off with help from our management district just combined with the hatchery. We have to rely a lot on other folks in our fisheries division to come in from the 4 corners of the state to assist us with this project.
It's all hands on deck, with Game and Fish crews working around the clock.
And it's a 24/7 at this point. The crew takes over. We've still got netting going on for several consecutive nights, and we're bringing these fish to the building, and then we start trying to spawn the fish.
Much like a hospital's labor and delivery ward, the hatchery takes on an expectant air as everyone waits for nature to take its course.
When they get close to spawning, they're a lot more docile.
That process is monitored by the hatchery staff, taking a little glass capillary tube and inserting it into the vent of the females and getting an egg sample. We see how close those eggs are to actual ovulation or at the point where a ripe egg is ready to be released.
Once these eggs get clear with a well-defined nucleus, that just shows that they're getting closer to being ready to spawn. We've got to keep track of these fish. That's when we use the yarn tags on them. We know when to check them. We keep record of when they spawn.
So when we do have a female ready to release her ripe eggs, they're basically just squeezed into a pan and milk from the males. The sperm is squeezed on top of the eggs and they are pan fertilized.
Basically what we're doing, we just want to move these eggs around so they can have more of an opportunity to come in contact with the sperm. We do this for a couple of minutes and then we'll decant all this water off and they'll go straight into the jar.
Generally we put 4/3 of a cups into a jar, which is around 150,000 eggs.
The eggs stay in these specialized hatching jars, tumbling gently for 3 or 4 days before hatching.
A newly hatched striper, at first they're going to have a yolk sac that they have to absorb. That's their first food supply. And until their mouth parts are developed, which does take several days after hatching, only at that time are they ready to seek their own food.
The fry spend 4 days in these indoor tanks until they're ready to move to the hatchery's outdoor ponds.
What we'll do is we'll pull the tank down to where we can get the fry out of the tank. We'll get $250,000 out of here, put in that stocking barrel to go to one of our fry ponds to be stocked this morning.
We'll take those fry, those little tiny fry, and put them over into that pond, and then they're ready to seek their own food, which will be the small plankton that they can actually get in their mouth.
This will be their new home for the next 2 to 3 months. This weighted barrel slowly sinks, just tempering the fry. It'll take about 45 minutes for it to drop. That way it lets them get used to the water chemistry and the temperature of the pond. Gives them a better chance of survival.
The next step is patience. It takes 2.5 to 3 months for the fish to reach the desired size for stocking in Arkansas lakes. And then there's even more work in store for the crew at the Hulsey Hatchery.
5.5.
The hatchery grows the fish in outdoor ponds for 10 to 12 weeks until they reach about 2 inches in length, which is known in aquaculture circles as a fingerling.
And at that time, they're going to be ready to put onto fish trucks and move to their respective receiving location.
But first, there's some hot, muddy manual labor for the hatchery crew.
6.9.
The harvesting process is distinctly old school, changing little since the program started in the 1950s. Crews use seine nets to corral the fingerling stripers, carefully surrounding the fish as they draw the net together. They scoop the small fish into waiting buckets, and a bucket brigade moves the fish from the ponds to the fish trucks.
4.6.
Weighing each bucket of fish allows the crew to estimate the number of fish going onto the truck. Harvesting the fish as fingerlings allows the hatchery to produce more fish for Arkansas anglers. The fish are now ready for their journey to one of Arkansas's striped bass lakes. The stripers on this truck are making a 26-mile road trip to the Brady Mountain area of Lake Ouachita.
They're pulled up to the boat ramp, and we'll temper the water to make sure it's as close to lake temperature as possible. Also gets the chemistry of the water somewhat the same to enhance their survival, and we'll release those fish. Today we've been trying something a little bit different. We have several interested striped bass guides here at Lake Ouachita, and they wanted to assist the game and fish, come out and help us any way they could to put these fish over into the lake. So we've added a step, and we've had these anglers meet us here at the boat ramp. These boat ramps are inhabited by a lot of little brim, long-ear sunfish, and little yearling bass that would probably take a toll on some of these very small fingerlings that are released at the boat ramp. So we're just trying to give them a little extra advantage and let our anglers that want to assist take these fish out into the open water away from the shoreline and some of those predators.
Swim, baby, swim.
Whether they're released from a fish truck or stocked in deeper water by volunteers, striped bass couldn't exist in Arkansas lakes without the Game and Fish Commission's annual spawning project.
When it comes to trout fishing in Arkansas, really the first place that people think about is that mountain home area. You've got the White River, which is our biggest trout water, running from Bull Shoals for about 100 miles. The North Fork River, which meets the White at the community of North Fork. But it's just a beautiful part of the state. You know, the White River cuts through the Ozarks there. And when you're fishing, it's not just about the fishing. You can see bald eagles, you can see great blue herons, and you know, it's just a fantastic place to fish, but also the scenery there is just so incredible. We started fishing directly below Bull Shoals Dam. Of course, it's a very large dam, 8 hydropower units there, and they had several of them running that day. So that's one of the big challenges to fishing the White River system is how the hydropower generation, those water releases, how to play that and catch fish, whether it's low, whether there's a lot of water coming out, or whether it's somewhere in between. It's springtime, and you know, you can trout fish in Arkansas year-round. It was a little bit cool when we started, and it wasn't just the air temperature, but the fishing was a little cold to start with. Didn't really start off with a lot of success. There he is.
All righty, buddy.
Oh! Dirty rat. But in the hands of a guy like Frank Satsa, it doesn't take long to kind of figure out what those fish are doing, and Frank's really good at finding them. Frank, how long have you been guiding up here now?
Actually started part-time in 1982. And then I've been at Gadsden's now almost 24 years, 24, 25, I kind of lose track. But pretty much full-time for the last almost 18 to 20 years, full-time. I always tell people I've been guiding here so long, I've got no excuses.
I've been fishing for trout in Arkansas pretty much my entire life, and I'm pretty confident in being able to go up there by myself and catch fish. but man, having a guide just, you know, basically is a shortcut to success.
Yeah, this side here, this side was usually, this is called the upper pool. I don't know if you.
You know, they know the river. They're on there every day. They know, you know, what kind of flies or lures are working at a particular time of year, or even a particular time of day in some cases. So, you know, being out with a guide like Frank that knows the river, knows how to read it, knows the current conditions, what's been happening, like I said, is really a shortcut to success.
There he is. Tiny.
There you go. That's a good picture I wanted there.
There we go.
Right there.
That's one of the ones they stocked.
Yeah.
Little brown.
On the first day, we tried a couple of techniques. We used some micro jigs, or very small marabou jigs, basically chicken feathers, 1/16, 1/32, even up to 1/64 of an ounce. Throw those out, let them drop, count to about 7 or 8, depending on the depth of the water, and then you pop that lure, let it drop back down, pop it again. Usually the trout are going to hit it on the fall. The other technique we used were stick baits, bass fishing technique really. I mean, a jerk bait, suspending jerk baits, throw it out there, 3 treble hooks on it, so lots of hooks. Really trying to target the larger brown trout with those stick baits, throwing them up a little bit closer to the bank and then jerking them down, letting them sit for a minute, sometimes for, you know, actually 10, 15 seconds, popping them again, trying to trigger strikes from some of those big brown trout that live in that part of the river. We were having a little bit of trouble dealing with moss that was washing downstream with the hydropower generation. And that was a problem throughout the spring up on the White River. But you know, especially when we were throwing the big jerk baits with 3 treble hooks on it, so you got 9 hook points, kind of hard to get it through there without snagging a little bit of the vegetation. But wasn't that big of an issue, and we kind of figured out how to play that. Frank, like I said, having a guide, you know, he knows how to sort of avoid some of the problems that might come up.
Pretty little fish.
And as the day went on, the fishing just got better and better and better, and pretty soon we were really stroking them and putting them in the boat.
There he is.
Oh, there you go. That's what we're talking about.
Oh, he is spunky.
Right,
nice. God, that fish just crushed that thing.
there we are. See right there? Pretty little fish. Just lift him up. Yeah, there's still a couple to catch. There's still a couple fish out here to catch. This is a little better one. A little brown. Oh, nice brown. Stay on there. Stay on there. Come on. It's a little male. See that hook jaw?
There it is.
All right, buddy.
Little rainbow.
You're throwing up on top of that ridge I was talking about earlier. That's a pretty rainbow, isn't it? Been in the river for a while. Hold still. Don't let you go. Like that. There we go. There's a little male. He's got a couple little scars on his cheek.
Catching any fish is a thrill, but when you tie into one of these big brown trout, they just fight a little bit differently. Man, it's hard to kind of articulate the difference.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. There we go. That's a nice little brown trout. He's skinny, but he's got a good length to him. He felt good. That's what the White River's famous for.
Oh, there he is.
You know when you've got one, just the way they surge against the line. And when you catch, you know, one of those big, beautiful brown trout and all those you know, colors of brown and gold with the red and blue spots, it's just such an incredible fish to catch here in Arkansas.
Arkansas Wildlife presents the Watch and Win Giveaway. During each episode of Arkansas Wildlife, we'll give away an Arkansas resident hunting and fishing license. At the end of this season, we'll be giving away $500 worth of fishing gear with everything you need for outdoor adventures on Arkansas lakes and streams. It's all provided by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Visit the Arkansas Wildlife webpage at arkansaswildlife.com and click on the Watch and Win icon to enter. This week's winner is Devin Bussell from Benton. Congratulations and thanks for watching.